Evolutionary systems and artificial life systems, in general, can be studied at many scales. While some artworks or systems evolve a single agent, thus addressing the agent modeling problem, the ecosystemic approach to evolutionary computation focuses on populations, species, and diversity of agents, as well as how they interrelate in their virtual environment. Evolutionary ecosystems allow addressing the multi-agent design problem. We studied virtual ecosystems previously. What we did not study then is that a number of these systems are in effect doing some evolutionary computation. The agents reproduce and their offsprings inherit from their genetic characteristics. This evolutionary ecosystemic approach allows more fine-grained models of evolutionary computing by unpacking the epigenetic developments of the individual from its birth to death. Virtual populations inhabit virtual environments and evolve according to their interactions both with other agents and their habitats. In the typical implementation, agents' simplified metabolism force them to forage for energy by moving and exploring the space of the virtual world they inhabit. Individuals are able to reproduce, typically through sexual reproduction, generating new offspring through crossover and mutation-like operations. The genes of the individuals who perform best at finding energy and at reproducing shapes populations and species through Darwinian natural selection. The selection process can be the natural selection process that unfolds from living and dying in the virtual world. It can also be influenced by human users, for example by introducing new agents to the system or modifying the resources in the system. Given the interactions between populations from various species, complex social behaviors emerge from coevolutionary processes embedded in them, such as mimetism, parasitism, mutualism, etc. In virtual ecosystems, evolution occurs without an explicit fitness function. We talked about implicit fitness functions or emergent fitness functions to design the fact that it is the environment, all its parts, and their interaction through the passing of time that are responsible for selection and evolution taking place. In most cases, there is no need to define a fitness function. The simulation is enough to serve as a fitness function. The various species in the ecosystem evolve or co-evolve in ways analog to what happens in biological nature. Because these systems are virtual simulations, one can also decide to deviate from the rules of natural evolution and explore alternative models to evolution. One such alternative approach is Lamarckian evolution. French biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck developed a theory of evolution 50 years before Darwin's seminal book came out. Lamarckian evolution rests on the conjecture that the living experience of an organism affects the genetic makeup of its offsprings. This is also known as soft inheritance. For example, it allowed for reasoning such as the following. Giraffes stretching their neck to reach leaves high in trees, especially acacias, strengthen and gradually lengthen their necks. These giraffes have offspring with slightly longer necks. Although current scientific evidence contradicts Lamarck's model, it has proven to be useful in some cases to extend and refine genetic algorithms or genetic programming and improve their effectiveness. This is artificial life in the sense of life as it could be. Soft inheritance is useful when examining the evolution of cultures, ideas, and other socially constructed phenomena such as memes. This is particularly valuable in the context of research in computational creativity. Experiments have been looking at whether agents and multi-agent systems can develop culture and how we can simulate its development in multi-agent systems. There have also been experiments on the evolution of language by agents or robots, by Belgian researcher Luc Steels, for example. Experiments have shown how non-genetic evolution can evolve a variety of collective symbolic constructions. Other mechanisms by which individual learning can affect the course of evolution have been researched as well. The so-called Baldwin effect refers to the effect that agents' learning capabilities have on evolution. Individuals evolve in changing environments, so there should be evolutionary pressure to favor individuals that can learn and adapt during their lifetimes. Individuals who can learn many traits will rely less on hardwired traits. That will have an indirect accelerating effect on evolutionary adaptation of the world population. So we do not necessarily need to breed behaviors, we can also breed meta-behaviors that allow agents to acquire new adapted behaviors very quickly. This is something that can be researched through artificial evolution. Tierra might have been the first virtual evolutionary ecosystems to become popular. Developed by ecologist Thomas S. Ray in the 1990s, it is a computer simulation in which the individuals or agents are computer programs competing for both CPU time and memory space. In this context, the computer programs in Tierra are considered to evolve and can mutate, self-replicate, and recombine. The simulation of evolution and ecosystem in virtual worlds has technical, artistic, and scientific interests. Large community-based efforts such as biota.org have emerged to federate researchers and practitioners in all the scientific domains concerned with evolution: microbiology, medicine, computer science, robotics, nanotechnology, paleontology, social sciences, and artificial intelligence. It is a very interdisciplinary domain. Biota.org even develops standards and interoperability formats that allow creatures from one virtual ecosystem to live in another one. Virtual worlds and artificial ecosystems are more than just scientific and educational platforms. Besides being social networking tools and places of social exchanges, they have also been appropriated by artists in various ways. Nature and evolution develop complex and aesthetically pleasing ecosystems, agents, and behaviors that engage all of our senses and produce some of the most valuable aesthetic experiences. This is a good reason to be inspired by evolution for artistic creation. In their 1994 piece Evolve, Krista Sommerer and Laurent Mignonneau are among the pioneers that gave the visitors control over a virtual ecosystem. The visitors can design their own creatures or agents to be added to the ecosystem and can interact with them through a touchscreen. The creatures also interact with each other in the ecosystem and can reproduce and evolve. Contributing to and witnessing this experience is the artwork. For Laurent Mignonneau, it is another way to give autonomy to the work and let it both be shaped by the visitors and evolve by itself. Let's listen to the authors talking about the work.
So the basic concept of Evolve was to create an artificial life environment which is open to an outside influence, which is open to the interaction with people, and has also this entertaining effect on the visitors.
Other early examples of virtual worlds include Larry Yeager's Polyworld from 1994 and Jeffrey Venturala's Darwin Pound from 1995. With Evolve, the user's creatures are visually composed using pre-existing parts. Life Spaces take a more abstract approach. In Life Spaces 1 and 2 by Krista Sommerer and Laurent Mignonneau from 1997 and 1999 respectively, users enter written text that is then treated as genetic code that maps to a three-dimensional creature. The creature would then be uploaded to a shared environment physically located in the museum in which the installation was residing. The creatures would thereby interact with other creatures. They can mate and their offspring inherit of their genome. Creatures can also be affected by the visitors of the museum. A camera-based movement tracking system integrates the silhouette of the museum visitors in the virtual world. This blurring of the lines between the real and the virtual, either in terms of space or time, is a recurrent theme of the evolutionary ecosystemic approaches. Likewise, Eden, a 2000 interactive piece that is one of a number of ecosystemic artwork by Australian artist John McCormack, is an interactive artwork in which an evolving population of agents living on the surface of two transparent screens generates the soundscape of the exhibition. The agents adapt to changes in the virtual environment brought about by human movement through the physical space. Alan Doran, another Australian artificial life artist, has also deployed several installations based on evolutionary ecosystems. In Constellation, from 2009, flowering plants consume resources from their environment and provide new ones that potentially allow new species to survive where they otherwise might not. Upon reaching maturity, each flower reproduces asexually by randomly scattering seeds in its vicinity. If the seeds happen to land in a suitable location and all the resources they need to survive are present, they in turn bloom. Otherwise, they decay. In Pandemic, a 2012 piece by Alan Doran, each organism is specified by a genome coding its color, dimensions, and behavior. Each organism has preferences for mates of particular colors, size, and aspect ratios. The human visitors act as a contaminant. A camera tracks the colors of clothing, which become transmissible disease organisms in the virtual world. As the organisms move around the world, they may encounter other organisms that are infected by the disease. This disease spreads. Some organisms die and others develop immunity. The process continues indefinitely as the organism and disease co-evolve in an ongoing arms race to outcompete one another, and as new diseases are introduced by human visitors. All these systems, and the paradigm in general, draw on the analogy between the simulated ecosystems and actual natural ones. But nothing asks for this analogy. And these cybernatures, as Australian theorist and artist Michel Whitelaw calls them, are made of code. An ecosystemic piece that is moving away from the analogy with biological nature is Iconica by Australian artist Troy Innocent. The piece is from 1999 and is a virtual world made of language and symbols. We have added some links to the resource section for those who want to know more about it. In all those cases, it is the ecosystem's dynamics that act as a fitness function, an implicit emergent fitness function, although some agents or events were influenced by humans. Another approach is to use explicit interactive evolution at the level of the ecosystem. Instead of breeding agents or individuals, one can breed ecosystems. Evolver is a 2015 installation by Dreesen and Verstappen. It is an example of an evolved ecosystem where the evolution does not happen in the ecosystem, but between ecosystems and driven by the users. Pixel-sized agents have 13 genes that determine their behavior on the screen. The agents sense the properties of their 8 surrounding pixels. Based on the values that it senses, each agent decides what to do with the pixel on which it stands and to which pixel it should move next. In this way, each agent makes traces on the screen. Together, the population of agents creates colorful animations reminiscent of microscopic observations, geological processes, cloud formations, fungal cultures, organ tissues, or satellite photos. Using a touchscreen, the users can vote out some populations and evolve a group of agents that generate the most intriguing animation. Once a predetermined number of votes has been cast, the computer resets and the process restarts. Evolved Cultures, also by Dreesen and Verstappen, from 2005 to 2011, concentrates on the evolution of the behavior of cellular automata and formula. Some of the ant colony painting works have focused more on genome evolution rather than on pheromones. Montmarché, Aupetit, and others have used an interactive genetic algorithm to evolve parameters for ant paintings. In the work of Montmarché and colleagues in 2003, fixed-length strings of parameters act as ant genomes. More precisely, the genome took the following form, where CR, CG, CB is the color to deposit, FR, FG, FB is the color to follow, the probabilities PL, PR, PA, which sums to 1, are the probabilities of moving left, moving right, or going straight ahead in the absence of ascent, and PF is the probability of following the gradient in the presence of ascents. Automatic fitness of the individuals depends on how good they are at following trails and how many unique cells they manage to visit. So the parameters governing the behavior of the ant, including the direction and magnitude of the sense vectors as well as the corresponding weights, are encoded in the genotype and are subject to evolution. Interactive fitness consists of selecting which evolutionary ecosystem is best. This idea of evolving evolutionary ecosystem is getting us closer to the idea of the Baldwin effect, in that we can evolve the system's evolvability. which is a major learning and adaptation mechanism advantage. Subsequently, Machado and colleagues in 2012 abandoned using the interactive evolutionary algorithm to set parameters for their system in favor of having users design their own fitness functions. Users could weight a linear combination of components that amalgamated image statistics, image qualities, and end behaviors. Here are examples of artworks produced using this system presented as a computer-assisted creativity tool. The attraction and entertainment value of evolutionary ecosystems that promote users in the position of gods or of Mother Nature has been exploited too. SimLife, subtitled The Genetic Playground, was a 1992 game by Maxis. It was a classic that launched the genre. SimLife gives players the power to create and modify worlds, create and modify plants and animals at the genetic level, design complete environments and ecosystems, study genetics in action, simulate and control evolution, and change the physics of the universe in their own computers. Another game is Creatures, which was released in 1996. It was an ecosystem-based game with digital creatures called gnomes. Gnomes were capable of learning and communicating, and the game mostly consisted of making them evolve by breeding them, teaching them, and trying to protect them from the many dangers of the world. The game became internet-based in 2001 for Creatures 3, which allowed gnomes to travel between different virtual worlds. This is reminiscent of the idea of islands in evolutionary computing. The idea of islands is to maintain diversity by having various subpopulations evolving on different islands, with only limited genetic exchanges between those various islands. Finally, Spore by Will Wright, who is also the designer of The Sims and SimCity, is a 2008 game which directly revolves around the idea of evolutionary ecosystems. In Spore, the player controls a species as it develops from a microscopic organism into an intelligent and social creature. Ultimately, the species might even develop space travel. A variety of tools and editors allow the player to produce creatures for the game. Creatures are automatically uploaded to the online Sporepedia, where they are available to other players. Spore was noticed for its open-ended play and content sharing. In the video game Galactic Arm Race from 2010, a genetic algorithm is used to breed new weapons. A weapon's fitness is based on how much it had been used by players, the assumption being that players have assessed how fit each weapon is. This fitness measure can be extracted from a single player or taking into account the aggregate use over all the players. In conclusion, evolutionary ecosystems are the most advanced type of virtual worlds. They exercise fascination and attract artists, gamers, and designers alike. One interesting consequence of a system having its own emergent fitness function is that it allows us to ask the question of open-ended evolution again. Can the process of evolution always create more sophisticated, more complex, more fit individuals? Digital evolution generates new types of individuals, but they are often not very interesting. Getting novelty seems to be easy, but getting new and interesting individuals using software is more difficult. The discussion of what is new and interesting, or new and variable, brings us back to the essence and maybe even the definition of creativity. The question of whether we can evolve new and interesting individuals and behaviors is still undecided, partly because interestingness and aesthetic quality are so hard to define. Can an ecosystem evolve with increasing complexity? And that brings us, in turn, to the question, how do we measure the complexity of an ecosystem? An obvious measure is the number of species, but perhaps you should also measure the number of interactions between individuals and the life expectancy of the individuals in given species. A notion that encompasses most of these aspects is the notion of niche, which represents parts of the ecosystem as nodes that might be equivalent to species. The niche's relationship with the rest of the ecosystem can be marked as directed edges between those nodes in a directed graph. A number of measures of complexity from graph theory can then be applied to the graphs. So that is one way to measure the complexity of an ecosystem and eventually measure whether evolution allows the growth of more and more complex systems. It is said that in nature, niche complexity does indeed increase exponentially, but it is not clear what is the case for computer simulation.